Castles in the Sky. Today is the Brits versus the Americans. It's Yanks and Tommies going at it, hammer and tongs. It's, what is it? It's 24 points versus 23 points to the British. The Americans have a Michigan-class battleship. They have a Tennessee-class cruiser. And then they have a pair of Bainbridge-class destroyers. These are escort ships. On the side of the British, we've got a Queen Elizabeth-class battleship, a Minotaur-class cruiser, and just the one Shaw-class frigate. Now, you'll notice we've got one extra ship on the side of the Americans. They have torpedoes, but their torpedoes are a lot weaker. The American torpedoes only have a strength of 2, where the British have torpedoes with a strength of 4. Did I get that backwards? Got it. The British ship is a little bit faster. It has a maximum speed of 13 versus a maximum speed of 10. But the British have a distinct advantage when it comes to leadership. You have to roll for your commander's basically initiative dice. And the British will either have a 2, 3, or a 4, depending on whether you roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to roll 1, 2, 3 dice to figure out what the command is for each of those ships. There's 1, 2, and 3. So with a 4, 6, and a 4, we'll have a command of 4, 3, and 4. Man, that's pretty good. For the Americans, we got to flip to the right. Where's our Michigan class? There we go. For the Americans, notice they actually have potential that they have a command of 1. And I know that's a little small, but let me just roll the dice. It's on a 1, they only get 1 command die. On a 2, 3, they get 2. On a 4, 5, they get 3. And in order to get 4 command dice, they got to roll 6. So I'm going to roll the dice 4 times, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, right across the board. So starting with our escorts, you get a 3, 1, 3, and a 1. So it's even worse than that. The battleship is only going to get 1 command die, as is one of these Bainbridge-class escorts. The other guys are only going to have 2 command dice, and it's poor leadership on the part of the Americans. Who said this is a alternative Earth? That one, I didn't even think you guys can even see the dice. There we go, 3, 1, 3, 1. For those of you that don't know, the guy that designed these miniatures makes an appearance in the chat down below, so you might thank him for the lovely little miniatures. They were a blast to paint. They're available from Irregular Miniatures, and they are, I can't remember which is which. One of these is called the Sons of Manakas, which is, I'm saying that with an Australian accent, because apparently knackers is, it's slang for the twig and berries, the old tenders, if you know what I'm saying. And then the other side is actually not the heirs of Manicus, which is how I'd been pronouncing it. Or heirs of Uranus, which is how I'd been pronouncing it. Apparently it's the hairs of Uranus, which is really childish and gross, and I'm shocked and appalled, and quite frankly scandalized by that. Not scandalized enough not to bring it up. It's hilarious. We appreciate a little bit of work in blue here. Hey, notice! Look at this. We got 2 different colors on our tabletop. We've got ocean-going areas, and we've got land-going areas. Now, honestly, if we pull back a little bit, look, it's just a little triangle. But we now have some elevation difference. The ocean will be elevation 0. The land will be elevation 1. So we've got some cliffs here. I don't know where it is. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to experiment with something a little bit more dramatic. But before we get to that, I want to show you how I've redone. My big disappointment with this rule set is there's no ship records. Like, I'm looking for like a full thrust set of ship records. I'm trying to figure out the best way to present the information to make it easy to use at the tabletop. This is the best I could do. I've got little circles there that show me where the fireworks are. You only got 4 aft, left, and right. And so what I got is the black area show you where those are, and I even screwed up this one here. So this particular battery right here is a medium battery, the Minotaur class cruiser right here. He's got 1 medium-class battery that can fire, as you see the colored-in portions of the pie there, port, fore, and starboard. And then he's got 1 set that can fire port, aft, and starboard. And then this one can just fire to the port and this one to the starboard. So really, if we wanted to, we can fire all 3 batteries out of the port or all 3 out of the starboard. But we have to fire at the nearest ship unless we pass a leadership test. So we'll get to that. I really want to get active and involved in the game because I think this is going to be a rather long one with the 7 ships on the table. The other thing I want to talk about is terrain. Now, I've only got the green fields here, so we've got some lovely meadows. I'm not going to put any miniatures or terrain out there, but there is something interesting we can do because we are dealing with the 3rd dimension, because we're dealing with the sky. There's some fun stuff. And this is where I think Castles in the Sky becomes a lot more interesting. The game gives you the option of using cloud banks, which block line of sight. It also gives you the option for storms and for night fights, each of which changes the character of the battle. Tonight, we're going to use cloud cover. This is a really interesting concept. I think it's really going to change the nature of the game. Basically, so remember, our ships can be at any elevation from 0 to 1 to 9. We're going to roll a d6. We're going to add 2. That elevation is going to be a horizontal layer that effectively divides the battlefield into 3 layers. Everything below, everything above, and everything at that elevation is going to be obscured by clouds. Meaning, if you're in the clouds, you block line of sight out of the clouds. I think I'll double check. I think you can see like maybe 3 inches through the clouds. But you can't fire from above the clouds to below the clouds. Isn't that interesting? So we effectively have like 2 different battlefield layers, and knowing when to pop up and pop down is going to be critical to the battle. I'm still new at this. I didn't want to mess around with worrying about line of sight. It's easy if you have a cloud, and you can just use cotton balls on a little stick to show where the clouds are. It's easy if the ships are on the same level, but what do you do if a ship over here is at elevation 3 and one here is at elevation 6 and there's a cloud kind of between and it's at elevation 5? Does it block line? There's a lot of stuff in here. I don't think they really cover in enough detail, so we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to go with cloud cover because I think it's going to be easy. The question becomes, what level is the cloud cover at? And that might become important because our land here is at elevation 1. Before I roll the die, the cloud cover is going to be at a d6 plus 2. We'll roll for that. Our ships will always have their absolute value of their elevation marked out with the elevation markers. The difference is if you're in this part of the battlefield, you cannot fly at elevation 1. If you're at elevation 1, you are considered to have landed. That means that the cloud cover, you'll have 1 extra elevation band. You can be one, like here, let's just roll and get it out of the way. All right, so the cloud cover is at elevation 5. That means you can be at elevation 1, 2, 3, 4 here, but you can only be at elevation 2, 3, and 4 here. So there's a little bit of a choke through the center. I don't know if it's going to be a big deal, but this is what we got. So again, these 2 ships, if they're both at elevation 4, they're both going to be resting on a total of 4 chips. And I think what we'll do is we'll consider this first gray chip to be elevation 1. If you're landed, we're just going to put you on your side just to show that these guys, it shouldn't come up in this battle. If you're at elevation 0, then you're kind of doomed. But one other thing I'll mention before we roll for initiative and anything else is that a friend of the channel, I think it was Dartmart, he said, don't use the red, yellow, and green markers. We are going to be using the gray markers for the first 3 elevation bands. And then I think we'll use the white chips. He said, don't use the red, white, and green. And the reason for that is that we have to track both our damage markers and our friction markers. So every time you get hit, you get a friction marker, and that affects your ability to act. Every time you take a damaging hit, you get a red marker, and you have to roll on the critical hit table. So this way, those red and yellow chips will jump out a little bit brighter from the tabletop. And, we'll still have 2 gray, 3 white, and 3 black for 3, 6, and 9. You'll get the idea as we go along. Setup looks a little something like this. The Americans set their ship first. We did some dice off, and we did alternate placement, and basically what you see is what you get. Now notice that I'm using these D20s to mark the speed of the ships, and that I'm using these elevation markers to mark the elevation. So we get a speed of 9 for this fast guy over here, and basically the Brits went below the cloud cover, the Americans went above the cloud cover. There is this particular escort over here is riding a little low. He is going to be starting at, our speeds will be 6, 4, 2, and 3. A little bit slower on this side, but they also have an elevation advantage that they can turn into speed later, and they don't have to worry about getting absolutely jacked up by the battleship. I should probably tilt over this way to show you that the Queen Elizabeth is right over here on this side. Now, I'm a little nervous about this game. I don't know if this is going to be a regular rotation thing for me because of all the table clutter. I already have dice on the table for speed. We're going to have a whole bunch of chips on the table for friction, they call it, and then for the wounds, and then with the dice. And I mean, you can put little villages down here, but they don't have much effect, so it just kind of looks pretty. You can put little roads or, but we're not going to be doing that because we're chiefly interested in the tactics. Basically, the British want to get stuck in as fast as possible, and I think we're going to try to swarm this side of the battlefield first. It's try to kill as many of the other guys before they manage to kill any of you. It's just that kind of battle. We will be playing 6 turns. The first phase of every turn is initiative. We're going to roll red dice for the red ships, blue dice for the blue ships. The flagship is the ship that has the highest armor value. This battleship for the Americans has a command of 1. This battleship for the British has a command of 4. So we're going to roll 1 die. We're going to roll 4 dice. But for every escort in your fleet, you get to roll an additional die. That means the Americans will be rolling a grand total of 3 dice. 1 for this guy, plus 1 for each of these escorts. And the British are going to roll 4 for the flagship, plus 1 more for their escorts. So 5. Count the successes. That's a 4 or better. And the Americans wind up with 2. Now these become command dice that can be used to give orders. The British have a dice pool of 5. Every single one of those was a success. 2 to the 5th. That's kind of impressive. What is that? 8 times 1 and 32? Yeah, good luck getting that again. Now, these can be turned in to give your ships special abilities. If they run out of ammunition, you can say, whoops, they reload, they're not out of ammunition after all. If you want them to accelerate at double speed, you can give them a speed 'em up. However, if you do that, they can't fire their cannons this turn. They can still fire torpedoes and drop bombs, and I think lay mines. They can use their point defense, but they can't use their direct fire weapons that turn because they're so busy either. You can have, normally these guys have a lift of 1. They can only go up 1 elevation, and that slows them down by a speed of 1. But if you give them an order, crash dive or crash rise, as the case may be, then they can go up 2 flight bands. They'll still lose 2 speed. They can't shoot, but at least it gives them a little bit of extra oomph where they need it. And that becomes particularly important when you come screaming down out of the heavens, which is really going to be key for the Americans. They have a slight advantage in firepower, I think. We'll take a look when the shooting starts, which we should get to that right now, shouldn't we? And here's where I already get confused. The British say, Americans, we want you guys to move first. We're going to alternate ship movement. I'm not going to alternate every time. I'm just going to tell you that I'm a little confused about how this works because you can change elevation at any point in your move, and when you do that, your speed increases by 1. Okay, great. My battleship over here has a speed of 3. My move units are 1/2 inch. That means he can move 1.5 inches forward. He can move 3 move units. The trick is, if you want to turn, you have to move 1 inch forward, and then you turn, and you have to move another inch forward after the turn. But because my battleship is at an elevation of 7 and at a speed of 3, if I reduce his elevation to 6, his speed automatically rises to 4. Now, I could have increased his speed to 4 without losing the elevation, but I don't think I can do both. Which means even though he's at a speed of 4, he can't turn on this turn. You with me? I think that's an issue. Wait. But he's at speed 4, so does that mean he can turn? Like if I move forward 1 inch, drop an elevation, increase speed by 1, does that take effect this turn or next? Now the way I'm going to play it is, your movement for the turn is whatever your movement is showing on the speed die for that turn. In other words, this particular escort has only got a speed of 2. He's going to increase his speed by 2 to 4, and I think this is the way you need to do that. So he goes, okay, I'm going to increase speed by 4, and then I'm going to move ahead. Well, actually, he's going to maintain his speed of 2. He's going to lose 2 elevation. I don't want to get too far away from my battleship. And then I'm going to just move forward. So he was here. His speed will increase to 4, and he's going to move to there. And he's going to match, basically he's going to match elevation and speed with the battleship. But normally in a game, if you're playing against an opponent, the Americans move, the British move. I'm just doing it out of turn because I want to mention that my escort can use his point defense to defend against torpedoes launched at the battleship if he's within 1 inch. I'm actually going to give it 2 inches because I'm gaming at half speed, half scale. The other issue is that I should point out is that we're going to treat the center of the disc as the battleship location. Our ships are grossly out of proportion to the ground scale and the game scale. Really, if you wanted to play this game so that it's, I think the most aesthetically pleasing way would be on a regular 4x6 foot table with this scale of miniature. I think that would look aces. My tabletop is really jam-packed, but real estate's expensive these days. So I'm going to go ahead and move everybody else, and we'll be right back. All right, I've moved all of my British ships. I double-checked the rules. You determine your speed first. This cruiser currently has a speed of 6. He's at elevation 4. He has a total lift of 1. I'm going to increase his speed to... Oh, he only has a maximum speed of 6. 6 is as fast as you can go. So I am going to keep his speed at 6, move him forward 2 inches, and then he can make a total of... What's it going to be? 1 turn, this Tennessee class. He can make 2 turns at 45 degrees. I'm actually going to go ahead and use 1 turn and bring him up that 1 more inch. Now, he could turn 2, he gets 2 turns at 45 degrees. You can make 1 turn at 90, I think. I don't think you have to move the 2 move units. In other words, an inch forward, 45 degrees, inch forward, 45 degrees, inch forward, 45 degrees. He is going to maintain his speed, however. This escort class has a maximum speed of 10, and he's got a lift of 2. In other words, I can say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give him a speed of 6 right now, and then we can move him the full 3 inches. So we can bring him forward an inch, and then we can make that 90-degree turn. I'm going to just go 45. And then he can move another 2 inches. And then on top of that, I'm going to go ahead and drop down 1 elevation to an elevation of 7. In fact, I'll go ahead and use one of my orders to crash dive. Now, we cannot fire this turn, but I'm going to lose a total of 2 elevations, and that puts him in the cloud bank with a speed of 8. He started off the turn with a speed of 6. He fell 2 elevation, picked up 2 more speed, so he is flying now, and that's going to be the end of the movement phase. As far as the firing phase is concerned, I don't think we have a whole lot, because these 2 ships, actually these 1, 2, 3 ships are in or above the cloud bank. This vessel is at 4. This vessel is at 4. And then what do we got here? Yeah, all of these vessels are at 4. So he's really going to take it on the chin. We probably should have popped up into the cloud bank in order to keep him safe, because everybody, I think, can fire at him. There are 4 range bands, 4, 8, and 12 inches. And if we check, we're just out of range there, there, and there. So yeah, there's no firing here on this first turn. And that means we move on to turn number 2, rolling for initiative. The British this time around get a total of 2 successes, and the Americans get 1 success. So we'll add those to the dice pools. They can give that many orders, and these successes will also be used to help out with our damage control later on in subsequent turns, or perhaps on this one. The British say, I want the Americans to move first once again. The Americans are still hiding in or above the clouds, a little bit of positioning. The British are getting closer, and if everybody is in the clouds, you can fire at short range. They have to be within 4 inches of each other. Turn number 3, we roll our command dice. The Americans get 2 successes. The British get 2 successes. Because the British have the higher command, they win the tie, and they say, once again, hey, Americans, I want to see you guys go. And basically, they're trying to get this battleship lined up to just start obliterating this side of the table. They're bringing all their forces around to this side to stay away from the American battleship. The Americans know that, so they'll start by moving their battleship as fast as possible. Now, it has a maximum speed of 6. Is it 6 or is it 5? And there's kind of the problem with using the fleece instead of the hard back. Maximum speed is 5, so even if he speeds up, it's not going to do him any good. And he's going to move to right about there, just following the coastline to there. These are our command dice in the corners. I've got 4 dice out here because The British made the choice of forcing the Americans to go first. That means the Americans get to fire first. And that means this Tennessee-class cruiser gets to take the first shot. He is within 4 inches of the battleship, but because this is a little bit awkward. When you've got 2 ships of the same class firing at each other, that's fine. When you have a ship firing at a ship of a different class, your success number, your toughness number goes up by 1. Also, when you are obscured by clouds, which we are, your toughness number goes up by 1. So our Tennessee-class cruiser is going to fire at the battleship. Now, normally, and he's only got 1 cannon that he can bring to bear. His best weapons are on the flanks, so he could fire out of the port and the starboard with a total of 6 dice, but he doesn't have any targets there. And this one might be in his arc, but it's blocked by this little escort here. So he's only going to be able to roll 4 dice firing out of his front. You have to declare all of your shots first. So we're firing 4 dice, toughness number of 6. It's off by 1 because he's firing at a battleship, and it's off by 1 because he is firing through the clouds. If he was firing at medium range, he would only be firing 2 dice. And if I could just pause before I roll the dice, looking for 6s. The stats are firepower for the number of dice, and then they have power for how likely they are to damage the other ship. So the 2 stats for weapons are firepower and power, and are you kidding me? You couldn't come up with something, both of them have to be power? Come on, guys, be a little more creative, would you? Anyway, rolling, looking for 6s, we get all misses. And because they're all misses, we have to make an ammo check, and that is a toughness number of 4 up. That means this battery over here is out of ammo, and we're just going to, look, I'm just going to do this now so I don't have to remember it, okay? We're using one of our command points to make him not out of ammo. I may be getting that out of turn. We may talk about that a little bit later. That ship is fired. He's done everything he can do. That means the British now get to take the option of firing. And this ship here is going to fire. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's beyond 4 inches. So basically, these 2 American ships are out of the fight for the moment. They're too far away. These 2 ships can fire at this ship. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fire this cruiser at this. And I know they look the same size, but just right, big, medium, small. So this cruiser is going to fire at this escort. It's too far to hit the cruiser. So he's going to be, again, at 4 inches and obscured, and he's firing at a smaller class vessel. He's only going to be hitting on 6s. Lucky for him, because the ship he's firing at is in his, what would that be? It's his left. It's his port quarter. He can fire both his bow and his stern batteries, meaning he can roll a total of 8 dice. And I'm going to bring out, let me get one more blue die. Not only that, but he has another medium battery on this side of the vessel that will allow him to roll 6 dice. You may want different colored dice because if you're firing with both medium and light batteries, then the light batteries, of course, will have a different firepower, so you have to know whether those successes. But in our case, it's all medium batteries, so we're just rolling a whole boatload of dice, looking for 6s, and we get a total of 1, 2, 3 hits all together. That means we're going to drop 3 friction on this ship here. And friction take effect immediately. But before we move on from that, we need to figure out how many of these are damaging hits. The power of a medium battery at short range is +2. So we're going to roll 3 dice because we had 3 hits. We're going to add 2 to those dice, and we're looking to beat an armor of 6. For every 6 or better, we will do a damage. In other words, but it's at +2, so for every 4 or better, and we get a total of 2 hits. So the frictions all stay, and that ship is going to get 2 red markers designating, and this is what I was talking about earlier, by, man, there's a lot of table clutter for this game. The friction take effect immediately. So this escort firing at this escort now is going to be an additional -1. Oh, well, that's a good point. So he's also going to be hitting at 6s. Because they're the same class of vessel firing at each other, he only has a light battery that will be able to hit. That light battery is only going to be rolling, let's see, the American light battery at short range fires 2 dice with a power of +1. So here's our 2 dice looking for 6s. He gets... he's hitting on 6s. So he got 1 hit, and now he is going to be doing a damaging hit on a 5 or a 6. It's not a damaging hit, but it is a 2 friction hit. so that when this cruiser now opens fire, so we did him, 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 and him. And now when this little escort opens fire here, he's going to do the same thing. The Shaw-class frigate has, oh, can he? Oh, you know what? I take it back. This little guy is at altitude 4. There's no line of sight. Can't shoot at him. Got to shoot at this guy. But this guy is, or it's a different class. It's obscured. We're at -1. Need a 7 or better to hit. He can't hurt him. So that means the Americans are done. I think you can declare, well, I'll fire this ship just as a pass. I don't have any shots to take. But now we have to do the big mamma jamma. This battleship is the last to fire, and it's going to fire at this cruiser. And that battleship has got a lot of shots it can take. It's firing a couple of heavy batteries. Well, let's think about this here, actually. That's about the 45-degree angle, meaning if it wants to fire all of its batteries, it's going to be firing at a ship that is, well, we can check the distance. And I'm going to pre-measure it's 4 inches. He's too far away. The only shot he's got over here. Now, if you're playing against an opponent and you declare a shot, you don't pre-measure. You declare the shot. If it's too far, then you got to make an ammo check. I'm not going to do that right now because I want you guys to see how the actual gameplay is done. Also, we get a couple of these, so it might not really matter. Point being, the shots that we do have, the Queen Elizabeth has a heavy battery up front that it absolutely can fire. So the Queen Elizabeth is forced to fire only at this American Tennessee-class cruiser, and it's got a lot of shots. It will be able to fire both of its front battery, its heavy and its light. And here's where we get into the fact that I've got a heavy battery that will roll 3 dice, and a light battery, the heavy battery is rolling 6. The light battery is rolling 3. And in both cases, we're still hitting on 6s, but we have different power for these. And they all hit. We didn't get any hits on any of them, so we have to make 2 ammo checks. Well, no, I'm not, because I'm going to use these in the recovery phase, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this is where, if I had a hit on this die, that die would be making the armor check at +2, whereas a hit with this one would be at +1. So you do need to keep track of which color dice you're rolling and making sure you understand which hit is which. But we're all done with the firepower phase, or the shooty phase, so now we do the kind of cleanup phase. We have a fairly specific order of operations here. If we had fighter planes in the air, now is when you move those fighter planes. But we don't. Now is when you apply damage. We have to make 2 damage checks. I'm going to roll a pair of red dice, and I'm going to roll a pair of blue dice for each of those. And there's a 2d6 on both of those, so we get a result of a 7 and a 9. And these critical hits mean hull breach. Oh, you know what else? The armor goes down by 2. So this little guy was at an armor of 6. Now he's at an armor of 4. And we get a hull breach, which means reduce the... Oh, I'm sorry. It was at 6. Hull breach reduces armor by 1. That cannot be repaired. The 9 means another hull breach. So his armor goes down to 4. Any ships that have been crippled begin to drop out of the sky. They will fall 1 elevation band now. We make a strike your color check. Let's see, player with initiative. Let's see, can alternate player when to strike. If it's stalled, if it's sinking, if it's crippled, if it's entangled, we're not there. If it's lost half of its armor or more, well, from 6 to 4, that's not quite half, so we don't have any strike your colors test. Now repair checks. A ship may receive critical damage. It's a note on the damage track. Players may attempt to repair critical damage or failed ammo tests. So this is where that happens. Roll a toughness number, a command dice for each ship. Each success repairs 1 critical damage or ammo test. All right, so I was completely wrong. We need to make an ammo check over here and 2 over here. 1 for the heavy battery, which is fine, and 1 for the light battery, which is still out of ammo. So we're not going to be able to fire that. We could use, I think we can use the command now, though. Let's see, repair tests. You can use, let's see, reload. You have to use the reload during the battle. So instead of firing, we'll have to use one of our command dice next turn, and that allows us to make an ammo check. This guy also needs to make an ammo check, and with a 5, he's going to be okay. So the only thing we have to remember now, and this is where I really wish I had a better ship's record, is that the port medium, what is that? The port light battery reloads on a 5 or better is out of ammo. And I guess I can put a little mark on my ship's roster to help me remember. I just put a little check mark, so that's how we'll do that. And then I think we're done. And then remove friction. Roll the command dice of your command ship plus any bonus command dice from escorts and add up this check. So for the Americans, we're going to roll 3 command dice. We get no successes. This ship maintains its 3 friction. With 3 successes, we would be able to pull off 3 friction, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. So this guy is still going to be all frictioned up for turn number 4. And we roll our initiative dice. Once again, the Americans are only going to roll 3 dice. I don't know if we get to roll one for this guy because he's got so much friction on him. But I already rolled it, and I got 3 successes. The British are going to roll 5 dice altogether and get 4 successes. So the British can make 4 command checks, and the Americans can make 3. And the British say, you know what, I want to move first this turn. And I'm going to start with my little escort, who is kind of running interference. With a speed of 8, we can increase the speed to 10. We'll be able to move 5 inches this turn. But I'm also going to use his lift of 2. Well, and I'm going to bring him up just 1 this time. In other words, altogether, we're going to raise his speed to 10. He has a maximum speed of I think it's like 13, which allows us to move a total of 5 inches, and we can make a 90-degree turn at any point. So we're going to move to here. That's 4 inches, make a 90-degree turn. And we're going to turn to face in this direction. We'll move that last inch. We'll kind of sneak him in here. Because he climbs 1 elevation, his speed is going to be reduced down to 9 at the start of next turn. And he is looking a little something like that. And we'll put a little marker for his speed of 9 right there. And the Americans now get to move a ship, and we'll bring this guy straight forward. And he has a speed of 6. So everybody now is at an altitude of 5, except for these 2 vessels at an altitude of 6. This guy is going to be able to move 3 inches to here, and that escort goes to there. I forgot to use any torpedoes. Oops. And then we'll move the rest of the ships off camera. But before I do, this guy was at an elevation of 4, and I did a bunch of shooting with him. Oops. So kind of looks like the British got away with one there. Well, we're all at elevation 5 now. Moving on to the shooty phase, the British get to fire first because they moved first. And we're going to take advantage of the cruiser having a pretty clear shot with the stern guns, a medium battery. We're only going to get to roll 4 dice this turn for this cruiser. But we want to try and put some friction. Oh, I already see I screwed up and I reversed it so I could point this out. We're hitting on 5s, and we get just 1 hit this time. We're rolling against a +2, and we're trying to beat his armor, and 2 + 2 is 4, which does not beat his armor, but we at least drop a friction on there, and that's important because the Americans are going to nominate their cruiser to fire, hitting on 5s, but their cruiser now, in addition to the 4-gun, because the British are directly port, yeah, I get it right. We're going to get to roll, oh my goodness, this is going to be kind of ugly. We're going to get to roll a total of 2, 4, 6 for the port gun, and then another 4 for the bow, and another 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all medium shots, and they're all hitting on 5s. But this time, the Americans get the heavy broadside, looking for 5s. And we get a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. So we're going to re-roll all 6 of these. That's 6 friction on the cruiser. And we're rolling at +2. The Minotaur class cruiser has an armor of 8. We only do damaging hits on 6s. We don't get any damaging hits, but we did drop 6 friction. That takes us to the end phase. Nobody has any damage they can repair. But we do, so we're going to do the same thing where we make our initiative check, I guess you could call it. We got 1 success. We can remove 1 friction from a vessel, and I guess we'll remove it from the cruiser. The British are going to roll their 5 initiative dice, and for every 4, it's the command dice for this guy plus the escort. So 5 dice, they get 1, 2, 3, 4 successes, and that will allow us to remove 4 friction from that vessel. We move on to turn number 5 of 6. And we roll for initiative. And we've only had 2 damaging hits. So I guess, normally it's whoever does the most crippled chips. But if we wind up with this kind of static situation, I guess we'll just go with the most impacting hits. The Americans get 2 successes, so they will have 2 command dice. The British get 2 successes, so they will have 2 command dice. And with the better commander, the British are going to get the initiative, and they're going to get to move first once again. And they will take advantage of that because they really like shooting first. And really, at this point, what we want to do is we're going to start by moving this guy 2.5 inches forward. And should we pivot him the 45 degrees? I don't think so, because it looks like our battleships are really going to get stuck in. In fact, why don't we go ahead and move this battleship 2.5 inches for the Yanks to right about there. And we'll move some more ships and be right back. Got a couple of broken lines of battle here, don't we? The British have 2 ships moving from your right to left, and this little escort guy is moving from left to right. The cloud cover really impacted the nature of the game, as does the slight mismatch in the command abilities. The Americans are hiding in the clouds is basically what it amounts to. And ordinarily, if we had a fair fight, at least in command abilities, we might see everybody kind of hugging the ground or well above that cloud, but as it is, we're just kind of hovering at 5. So it's a little weird that everybody's kind of picked an elevation at which to fight. If you are firing at somebody who's at a different elevation, you have that extra -1. Something to be aware of. The British do get to fire first, and we're going to go ahead and say that because there is a direct line of sight from the bases of the American ship to the British ship, the British are going to fire first, and then the Americans will return fire. And man, do we have a lot of batteries that can open fire. These battleships have really good fire arcs. We're going to be able to fire both of our heavy batteries. So it'll be 12 dice at +5, and 1 light battery, that's 3 dice. So how do we figure this out? Well, we'll use these are the light. These, make sure we can show you, are for the light, and then the red and blue will be for the heavy, and we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and I need 2 more, so 12. And in this case, we are going to be hitting on 5s across the board. We're within 4 inches. We do have cloud cover, but it's big boy shooting at big boy, looking for 5s. And, oh man, because it's not crowded enough as it is. That was a 1, that's a miss. And not a bad shot. We'll pull out all of the misses. The light battery doesn't do any good. But this heavy battery manages to score a total of 8 friction. And the heavy battery is going to be at +5, shooting at a ship with an armor of 4. So 8 friction, and for an armor of 9, meaning we do damaging hits on 4s. And that's a pretty impressive roll right there. We get a total of 4 damaging hits. I'm going to quickly run out of friction markers. I'm going to use the yellow diamond as 5 friction markers. 4 damaging hits means 4 red chips. But the Americans do get to return fire. And likewise, they have a very similar shooting ability. They're going to be able to roll. Man, they don't. Their heavy batteries are rolling 5. We only get 10 dice. Let's see. Okay, so the Americans have a slightly different. They don't have heavy and light. They have heavy and medium. And he's going to be able to fire both of his heavy batteries and 1 medium, meaning it's going to be 10 and 3. So once again, our red and blue dice will be for the heavy. And there's our 10 and 3. So not quite as many dice. Because he has a friction marker, the Michigan-class battleship is only going to be hitting on 6s. Normally it's 4s. -1, it makes it 5 for the cloud, and the friction means it's on 6s. And he gets a total of 2 hits with his big guns. So 2 friction to the British, and we are rolling at +5. The British have an armor of 9. We're looking for 4s or better. We get 1 damaging hit on the British vessel, but 2 friction. So we'll drop a couple of chips down like so. Then we're going to exchange fire. We've got, so the British are going to open fire with the little guy on the little guy. And the little guy only has a firepower of 1. What is that? 1 at nothing. So the little guy firing at the little guy is going to roll a miss. The other guy is going to... So, oh, that means an ammo check. So we got 2 misses here. And I'm going to roll ammo checks, which will be successful on... Oh, what is it? Fours or better. So the red ship is fine. The American escort is out of ammo. We'll have to make an ammo check. In fact, we'll do that right now for the end, and then he's still going to be out of ammo. So this guy cannot fire on the next turn. And then our cruiser will open fire here, and the cruiser is going to only be hitting on 6s. But he is going to have a total of, what is that, 10 dice he can fire? Yep. And hitting on 6s with 10 dice, we kind of like that. He's at +2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So he's going to be able to drop a load more friction, I think. And he's going to get a total of 2 hits. So 2 more friction. And he needs 6s to damage, I believe. He's at a strength of +2. No, he needs a 7 to penetrate. But at least he's able to get the extra friction on that guy. And then this American cruiser is going to fire at that little escort. He needs 6s to hits. And he likewise has 10 dice. Hitting on 6s, we're going to try to knock out this escort. He only gets 1 hit. That's all right. 1 hit might do it. He's at +2, shooting a ship with armor of 6. If he gets a 4, he does hit. He does not, so this ship has friction as well. Moving on to the damage check, we're going to see what happens to the American vessel. We roll 2d6 4 times. We get a total of, 2, 7, 6, and 7. So the hull goes down by 2. Reducing his armor to 7. Let's find out what that snake eyes means. I was wrong. He is on fire. Every turn, we have to make another, and he's got so much friction on him. It's ridiculous. So on every turn where that fire is still raging, he has to roll on the chart again. This battleship has to make a check, and he gets a result of a 6, which is the... Oh, and the screw is fouled for both of these guys, so their maximum speed is reduced by 2. The Queen Elizabeth's maximum speed is 4. She's going to have to slow down, I think. And his maximum speed becomes 3 as well. Let's just check. If the airship has a maximum speed of 0, ignore the special damage. Wait. Normal stalling rules apply. Reduce the ship's armor by 1. Oh, I didn't see that part. So the American battleship now has an armor of 6, and when you shoot it, that's what you're shooting against. The Queen Elizabeth has an armor of 8. I guess we can get rid of this too. Then we try to get rid of friction. We'll just roll them all the same way we do as always. Looking for successes. The British are going to get 1, 2, and the Americans are going to get 2. And the British say, my battleship is not frictioned at all. The Americans will remove both of theirs from the escort, and I think that's where we're at. Then we move on to turn number 6, and we will do the exact same thing we always do. It'll be 3 blue dice and 5 red dice. See if the Americans can steal the initiative for 1 turn. The Americans get 3 successes. The British only get 2. And I don't know, that, it could make a difference. You never know. And they do that because they want to shoot first. The battleship. Unfortunately, the British... let's check with our rulers, shall we? Are they within that 45-degree arc? I think they are, meaning they're going to take the usual 6, 10, and another 3 for that. No, it's another 4 for that medium battery. But this time we're going to see what happens if we issue a battle command. And what do we got in the way of battle commands that might help us out here? We can fire for effect, reroll, misdirect. These types of weapons on our things. Make ammo tests for all weapon batteries that fire for effect. Well, this is the last turn, so I'm not worried about ammo checks. So any misses get to be re-rolled. We are only hitting on 6s. So we get a total of 1, 2, 3 hits. And then we get to re-roll these. And of course the British will get to do the same. So that's a total of 4 hits on the British. So 4 friction, and then we roll. Now we are still at +4 for all of the dice that hit. you guys can't even see that, can you? We're at +4 for all of the dice that can hit, and we are now attacking a battleship that only has an armor of 8. So we will do damages on rolls of 4 or better, and we roll a lot of 1s and 2s. So all we managed to do is drop a ton of friction on the battleship. So the battleship is going to return fire, and the battleship is going to get to roll 12 dice, as before, 12 and 3. The colorful dice will be our... And I gotta kind of roll them because there's so much stuff on the table. I'm just going to drop them like this. There we go. They will also fire for effect. Oh, by the way, that's commands. So we take those out. And also get to re-roll misses. So all of these 6s that hit, they got 6 hits right out of the gate, but all of these guys get to be re-rolled as well. Man, the friction is really built up, and that re-roll nets us 1 extra big attack. Now, the big attacks are going to be at +5 for the, I'm just going to, since we're done moving, this is the last turn, I'm going to get this clutter out of the way, all right? Just keep bumping my ships. All right, so where was I? We're going to roll these dice, and the red and blue dice are going to be at +5. The yellow and white are going to be at +1, and we are trying to beat a 6. Oh my gosh, well that means that these 3 are misses, and at +5, we get 3 more damaging hits on this guy. And I guess, I mean, we'll go ahead and roll it out. That now concludes things for the battleships. I'm also not, because he's already fired, I'm going to get rid of these friction. This escort is out of ammo, so we'll roll for this guy. If he is within 4 inches of the battleship, he's got a shot. I think that's pretty good. I think we'll give it to him. The cruiser is going to fire 2 medium batteries. I think, yeah, that's going to be a total of 14 dice. He's got the bow and the stern both can fire through the starboard arc. And he will also fire for effect. Now, that's the second one of these. And this is the command dice for the British. Got to remember that. So we're going to roll a total of 14 dice here. And they're all going to be at the same abilities. There's 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right. Here's a big roll. We are only hitting on, it's going to be -1 for the cloud cover, -1 for the difference in ship class. We're only hitting on 6s. We get 2 hits on the first roll. That's really terrible, man. 14 dice. I guess that's about average. And then we'll roll again, and we get another 4 hits. And those are only going to be at +2 because they're medium shots, but at least they have the option of hitting. If on any 6s, we'll do a damaging hit. So we get 1 damaging hit. And you get it. You see what's happening here. I'm going to fast forward to the end of the game. I'm just going to skip the rest of the firing. I want to know what happens to my boys, the big boys, because this is really going to determine it. I'm going to take 3 shots. I've got 1, 2, 3 pairs of dice here to see what happens to the American ship. And with the 6, 6, and 8, that's 2 more hits on the screw fouled, and the 8 is a hull breach. So his armor is going to go down from 6 to 3. Because he is at half strength now, we have to make a check for strike your colors. What we do is, if a ship has taken too much punishment, the ship may lose heart. Take turns alternating making strike your colors tests. The Americans are going to go first, as they always do. All you have to do is make a command dice check, right? We just need to roll a 4 or better. And with that, the American has struck his colors, and the game is over. Just that easy, right? And the thing is, that's why you have to alternate. And man, I didn't realize that's an important consideration for initiative. Let's find out what happened to the British carrier, the British ship anyway. Result of an 8 is another hull breach. His armor goes down to 7. He's still at above 50%, so he wouldn't even have had to make a strike your colors check. We can clear the damage dice. Now, I kind of sped through that last turn or two because I wanted to show you the end phase, and we're kind of getting to the end of a rather longish video. I think this is a game that benefits from having all afternoon, take your time, and I do think that you could have a lot of fun with this game. The nature of the fights is going to be very different. I don't know. You guys tell me. Is this kind of what happens in a World War II or World War I naval game? That there's a lot of kind of fishing around for positioning, and then eventually it just becomes a scrum in the middle with shots firing all over the place. Interestingly, our fleets were circling each other. We didn't get any fun situations like this where a battleship could get to decide and fire both broadsides on opposite sides. But again, that's kind of by design. That's what the admirals like to do. That's what the navies like to see, right? So the game is mimicking what you would expect out of a real world naval engagement. And the fact that we didn't have quite so much of the 3D up and down is really reflective of the terrain more than anything else. The cloud cover directs the game, which makes sense. That's what you would expect to happen, isn't it? That's the mark of a good game. I don't know how many more games of this I'm going to throw up on the channel, but I'm really glad I showed you guys. I don't think it's my cup of tea, but it might be yours. And you now have a much better idea if that's the case because you've seen it in action. And there's probably, if you enjoy this game, there's a lot of replayability. There are all the usual convoy escort missions. There's bombing missions where you got to get your bombers into position. I didn't use torpedoes. That might have kind of influenced the game too. Some of these escort ships have really powerful torpedoes that don't suffer from attacking a different class ship. They're fairly powerful, but it was also a bit of a scrum where those torpedoes, any misses will continue to move through and blow up your own ship. So I might not have even used those even if I had an accurate shot. So a lot going on here. Kind of a fun game. Definitely more of an all-afternoon game. If that's what you're looking for, I think you found it. Till next time, I'm praying for you.